It's always a good idea to start a story at the beginning. The New Testament begins in the Old Testament, and the Lord's Supper does as well. You can't really start to talk about the Lord's Supper without referring to the Passover. So that's where our study is going to begin. The Passover tells a story of redemption. It's so important to remember that before God asked anything of his people, he saved them, and he rescued them and promised to love them and protect them and care for them. So the story of the Passover tells how God rescued his people from slavery in Egypt. It's a meal of redemption, and Exodus both prescribes the celebration of the Passover for the very first time, but it also describes how God's people, the Israelites, will celebrate this every single year as a reminder of who they are and what God has done for them. God's instructions for the Passover were really specific. He described exactly the kind of animal that would be killed and eaten in the meal. It was to be a lamb or a sheep without defect, 1 year old, and it was to be roasted completely whole over the fire. And the blood of that animal was to be painted on their doorposts, on the sides and the top of the door frame. And then the bread that they baked was to be made without any yeast. They were to completely remove all yeast from their homes, as a reminder that they had to leave in a hurry. And then they were to eat the meal with their cloaks tucked into their belt and the staff in their hand and their sandals on their feet. And this would remind them that they had to leave in a hurry. When God rescued them, they had to go. Imagine Moses trying to explain all of these specific instructions to thousands of people so that all the families got it exactly right. And yet the end result was beautiful. A meal is so much more powerful than if Moses had have got the people to sit down and just given them a sermon. A meal is something they could participate in them. It not only told them their story, but it celebrated it. They were living the story. And then for future generations, this same meal would tell them who they were. It would tell them who their God is. And they would not only be hearing the story and learning about who they are, but they would be living it. They would be participating in this relationship with God. And the bitter herbs would remind them of the bitterness of slavery. And the bread baked without yeast would remind them that their ancestors had to leave in a hurry. God saved them in a hurry. And then the blood of the lambs would remind them of the cost, the sacrifice, of the redemption that God won for them when the lamb or the goat was killed, and that saved them from both the Israelites and also from the judgment of the angel of death. This was a meal that not only told them their story, but they could participate in it.